Right, I'm gonna get my hair up because I know this is going to make me cross, this video. And you know what, I'm normally a very calm person, it's part of the nature of the job, etc. But this lady deserves no calm, she deserves no chill. Okay, I'm just checking in my camera that it's not completely wonky donkey. It'll do. But I'm going to be reacting to one or more clips, depending on how long I talk for, from Ruby Franke. Now, if you haven't heard of her, I will give you context in a second. But a full disclosure, so that you're not surprised by the content of the video, I am going to be talking about Ruby Franke and reacting to the clips on the basis of being a teacher, on the basis of being a professional in an educational setting, because there's loads of YouTubers out there, there are probably hundreds, maybe thousands of videos, even news channels, reacting to clips from her or talking about her. And actually I haven't seen any teachers or people in education talking about her. And knowing, obviously I'm going to talk about it in a second, but knowing what she's just been arrested for and knowing the background behind the arrest, I think it's important, and it just highlights our role of safeguarding. And I think this is the perfect demonstration, because I want everyone to understand how important the role of teachers are, and teaching assistants, educators, anyone in a school setting, how important their role is in keeping children safe, teenagers, etc. So if you don't know who I am, then hello, my name is Miss Paris. Welcome back to my channel if you've been here before, but hello if you're new. On my channel you can find tips, advice and information all about teaching, as well as being able to follow along with my own personal journey. So if you are coming from an educational front, trainee or a teacher, then go check out some of my playlists, because there are so many videos out there that will give you loads of helpful tips and information for your practice, for your teaching journey. And if you do like those, go and subscribe. We are very close, well, we're nearing 5,000 subscribers, which has taken me, I think, about 5 years, but we're nearing there, so any support will be fantastic. But now let's get into the more serious topic of Ruby Franke. Now, for those of you that don't know, Ruby Franke is the mum of a family in Utah that has 6 children. Her and her ex-husband ran a very popular YouTube channel called 8 Passengers, which at the peak of its popularity had 2.5 million subscribers, which is huge by anyone's account. And it was forever controversial because their videos clearly showed no respect for their children's privacy, including a video of their child shaving their legs for the first time. And they also made lots of controversial decisions in their videos, as well as saying statements like, oh, I'm going to take away your right to breakfast or dinner, etc. And lots of people for years, you have a look in YouTube, people 2-3 years ago were talking about how many of their videos could be constituted as ABUSE, which from now on I'm going to call CA, because I don't want YouTube to hate me for making this video. And recently, on August 30th, her and her business partner, Jody Hildebrandt, were arrested at Hildebrandt's home for CA. The reason for this arrest is that her 12-year-old son climbed out of Hildebrandt's home and ran to a neighbor for help, and because they were hungry and they wanted to phone the police. And when the police arrived, as well as the neighbor having seen this as well, they saw that there was lacerations from previous kind of rope injuries being tied up. There was also duct tape around their extremities, that's what the news article said, and they were obviously very malnourished. This child got taken to hospital, and I think another child that was still in the home at the time was also taken to hospital. The other 2 children I'm not sure about, and the 2 eldest, one is 18 and the other has actually gone to college, and she spoke a lot since leaving the family home about what the environment was like. Now, as you can imagine, this is huge, because somebody that had a public platform, that had 2.5 million subscribers, that was showing the everyday moments and life of her whole family, actually was arrested for CA. And not just that, not just 1 count, but 6 counts. And actually the counts continued to increase. It didn't start as 6, it became 6 after further investigation. The reason I wanted to make this video is because, like I said, there were a lot of clips that were very controversial, and actually upon doing further research, it turned out that neighbors and family members of Ruby Franke had actually spoken to CPS before. They had tried to let people know. There was a petition online from viewers that had thousands of signatures, and actually CPS still didn't do anything. And you do wonder, actually, at what point had this started? At what point could it have been intervened with and stopped before these dreadful CA events or prolonged CA had occurred? And as a teacher, teaching assistant, whoever, I'm just going to say teachers because that's my position, but we have such a huge responsibility for making sure children are safe, because do you know what? Clearly all these people that had spoken out weren't being heard, and actually at school we have the privilege to have access to potential websites, software that allow us to document things over time. And one of the clips that I'm going to watch really infuriates me. I have a lot to say on this, but you'll see exactly what I mean.
I just got a text message from Eve's teacher.
Okay, so already, I know it's been like 1 second, but I do want to talk about boundaries a little bit. So obviously Ruby just said that she received a text from the teacher, which means she wasn't able to keep it as an anonymous number. I think Ruby did the right thing and she covered the name and the number of the teacher. But I think it's really important when you're trying to communicate with parents. If you call them, make sure it's from either a school number or you privatize, you hide your number. And I think with texting, it's something that almost wants to encourage a conversation. If you send somebody a message, you get a reply, you then send, and then it can go on forever. And I think the danger with this, when they have access to your private number, it's very difficult to maintain those boundaries and maintain that work-life balance. Because technically, they could send you a message at 8 p.m. panicking about something or asking a question about the sports day the next day, etc. And then it's very difficult to not reply, because then it seems like you're ignoring or you're not doing your role. But actually, you do need to keep that privacy and, like I said, those boundaries. If you create an expectation of, oh, I can, reach out to you whenever, you can reach out to me whenever, then it becomes really difficult. And also, you don't know, you might have some parents that are slightly trickier than others and who might come across very passive aggressive. We saw that actually the blue is her reply, I think, yeah. And actually we don't know what was said. She didn't read it out to us. So you don't know what tone it was, you don't know how polite or how formal it was, and actually you could subject yourself to ABUSE yourself, because it might be verbal, it might be aggressive, it might be making accusations, it might be making complaints, and actually that's not for you to tolerate, that's not for you to accept. And I don't know the system in the US, I don't know if this is like a Utah thing or everyone does this, but in the schools that I've worked in, very often you need to ask the office to send a message or send a reminder to the parents so that you're not directly doing that. Obviously some phone calls are specific situations that the office might not know about, so I would ring, but I think that really helps have boundaries in place and support your well-being as a whole. And I think it must be better for parents as well, because then you're not going to get inundated with messages all the time or some late night reminder, because you don't want that on your shoulders either. So I think where you can, avoid such a thing.
And she said that Eve did not pack a lunch today, and can I bring a lunch over to the school?
So apparently the text said that Eve, her child, I think one of her youngest, didn't pack a lunch, and could Ruby bring one over? Now, I agree with the teacher's decision to contact about this, because obviously food affects all of us, and at the time Eve was 6 years old, so obviously those little children, they need food, they need nourishment for energy, for concentration, etc. And you can see from Ruby's face of disgust, this kind of like frown and the side eye and the eyebrows up, that she's not happy about this. Now I get that, you know, I acknowledge that she's a busy person, she's got 6 kids, it must be frustrating if you're always getting calls like this or text messages. But in my situation, I would have done the same thing. I would have made sure to inform the mum, dad, parent, caregiver, whoever, that actually they didn't have food. And could they bring something? I think that's a very standard question to ask. Now, the reason she might look annoyed is that maybe she might be too busy to bring in a lunch, or maybe she's frustrated because she prepared something for Eve herself and she didn't bring it. All of those are possible options. But I know that if you don't ring, parents, if they find out, they're going to be more annoyed and be like, why didn't you tell me that my child didn't have anything? I would have brought something in. So this is always a precautionary method. Now, you can tell that she's annoyed, and you know, in situations where maybe a parent can't come into school, then normally we would obviously accept this, but we would ask permission that we can give them something to eat. And it's very rare that parents say no, because it's kind of free food, or at worst, you know, they have to repay it back later, but it's not too much for school lunches. Especially in the UK at 6 years old, they would still be entitled to free school meals. And also, you know, it then releases the potential guilt that happens to the parent. If the parent's like, oh my gosh, I must be such a bad parent because my child isn't eating, what are the other people going to think of me? Then actually it relieves that, because it's like, okay, I'll make sure they have an extra snack when they get home. I don't know how much they're going to be fed at school, but at least they'll get something. And if you're in that situation where, you know, a teacher rings you and says, oh, they don't have lunch, and you're not in a situation where you can just leave work, let's say you work in a hospital or something and you can't just leave to go and get lunch, that's absolutely fine, but make sure to talk to the school and try and arrange something. I know that in my class, just gone, that last academic year, there were 2 children that often refused to eat anything. So very often we would ring and be like, I'm really sorry, but again, you know, your child has refused to eat. They said they didn't like it. And both the parents said that actually that was their child's way of slightly manipulating the situation to get a packed lunch from the parents. And so, you know, we kept talking about it, we made arrangements, and the children began to eat what they were given. And, you know, we would have a precautionary apple or something should they really not like the food. But we were on board, the parent and the teacher were on board, we were on board, and actually it still benefited the child. So if this is a situation you find yourself in as a parent or a teacher, there are options available. But let's have a look at why she's actually annoyed.
This happens quite often when you're raising children, because I know that her teacher is uncomfortable with her being hungry and not having a lunch.
This phrasing bothers me. I know that the teacher is uncomfortable with her being hungry. Well, yeah, I mean, is that not just the most obvious statement ever? Because we actually care about, you know, the nourishment and the nutrition of your child. You know, we can't be there talking about lessons about healthy eating and then actually there's a child in your class that hasn't eaten and you just don't care, you're comfortable with that. No way, that's just not a thing. And actually it's not even about the principle of us being potentially uncomfortable about a child not eating. Just think about it, even as adults, we can get hangry. I mean, there's a reason that expression exists. We can, you know, suddenly feel a bit weak. We can feel a bit grouchy. Those are all normal when we're hungry, and that's us adults. Imagine for a 6-year-old that is trying to concentrate, trying to listen to the teacher. I mean, she's wearing a beanie right now. Maybe it's not warm in that instance and it's quite cold in Utah. But in a classroom with like 30 bodies and, you know, it can get warm. Imagine if you're warm, you can't concentrate. You might end up feeling a bit sleepy or a bit sick. You know, you could even end up passing out. Like, people can pass out from being hungry. We don't know how much she ate for breakfast, etc. And it's not about the teacher being uncomfortable. This is actually about how it could physically and mentally and emotionally affect the 6-year-old. So I worked with 7 to 8-year-olds. I was in year 3. And, you know, when a child got hungry, they would become really emotional. You know, it would be like, oh, let's try and write 2 more lines. You know, and then it'll be lunchtime. We've got a few minutes left. Try and give me 2 more lines. Put an expanded noun phrase in. And if they were hungry, they might just start crying. You know, and they're 7 to 8-year-olds. So imagine a 6-year-old that's hungry in the afternoon. They might be hot, they might feel down, they might lack attention. And then if she does something wrong, I'm sure Ruby will then tell her off big time without understanding actually the physical implications of that. You know, it can have an impact on her education. And for her afternoon to potentially be at not maximum working capacity, for her to be down in the dumps potentially because of hunger, it's not at all about teacher discomfort. This is about the child's education. And as a good parent, you should care about that. Sorry, I told you I was gonna get angry.
And it would ease her discomfort if I came to the school with lunch. But I responded and just said,
discomfort.
Eve is responsible for making her lunches in the morning, and she actually told me she did pack a lunch.
So Eve is responsible for making her lunches in the morning. Don't get me wrong, as a teacher I am all for trying to promote independence. Now if you imagine, if you are, and I have been in a class of 5 to 6-year-olds, you have 29, 30 kids that are 6. You love the parents that have been trying to instill a sense of independence, because those children are the ones that can put their coats on. They're the ones that can open their yogurts. They're the ones that can open their lunchboxes, etc, etc. But there is a difference between making them independent and making them solely responsible for their basic needs. Now, if you think about it, it is okay for, you know, teaching a child how to make a sandwich, how to spread the butter properly, how to whatever. It is even okay if she makes the lunch and then she says, right, Eve, you're responsible. I would like you to pack your lunch and put it in your school bag so that you have it for school. That's fine. But it is still their parents' responsibility. I'm not solely blaming Ruby here. You know, the ex-husband has a say in this as well. They have the responsibility to check what has been done. Even if, as they were walking out the door, with all 6 children, they said, right guys, open your bags, show me your lunches, or have you all got your lunches, quickly check. And then that way, rather than making a big deal of it at school if they forget their lunch, in that instance, in the corridor, hallway, whatever, they go, oh, okay, right, I forgot my lunch. I'm just gonna quickly go to the kitchen and get it. It would save so much hassle. And you know what? The responsibility is still on the children, but it is hers to check. So everyone has a responsibility here. Eve is one of her youngest children, so actually she's got even less of an excuse because the older ones are more likely to remember it, or they could even have a look at Eve's. But again, you don't want to put that responsibility on the older kids. You know, she can do that in the morning. It is not a big ask. Independence, good. Sole responsibility for basic needs, not good, not acceptable. And actually, that is one of the things we would potentially think about marking as the safeguarding concern. If everything was that child's responsibility, and actually if they forgot something, they would get punished for it. Or if they forgot something, there would be a consequence, or, you know, the need wouldn't be met in another shape or format.
Morning, and she actually told me she did pack a lunch.
Maybe this is why Ruby is angry. It's not about her daughter having forgotten it. Maybe it's because she said to her mum that actually she did pack it. Now, obviously she's 6, so she may have thought that she did it and she forgot. You know, it doesn't take much to throw a child's focus off track. She might have needed the loo and gone, oh, I'll do it in a second, and then forgotten to do it and thought she did it. But maybe is that why Ruby's taking this stance of, you know, I'm not going to go in, or I'm annoyed that they asked, because she thought that her child had packed her lunch. But in any case, what I just said about checking should still be applicable, because this whole thing would have been avoided if she had just checked as well.
So the natural outcome is she's just going to need to be hungry.
That's shocking.
And hopefully nobody gives her food and nobody steps in. And
I don't know how well you can see my face, but hopefully nobody will give her food. That is such a disgusting collection of words. Hopefully nobody will give her food. So it's not even like, do you know what? She's not gonna get food from me. I'm gonna be stubborn about this. she said she already had her lunch, end of story. She actively hopes that nobody will give her food. So actually that puts the school in a really tricky situation of, do we obey the mum, or do we actually just go with what the child physically needs in their body, which is food, and we give them food? But can you imagine, like, how many times in daily school life the school is put in a really awkward situation, because then Ruby could make a huge like backlash or could make an official complaint, etc., all because she didn't want her child to eat. But she, you know, she's 6. This is absolutely insane. Okay, so that was the end of the clip about Eve and her lunch. And as you can see, this is why I focus specifically on this clip, because it involves teachers and schools and communication. And this is something, me personally, and I'm sure other teachers, if you are watching this, please let me know if you agree with me in the comments below, but we would mark this as a safeguarding concern. Okay, forgetting the lunch is not a safeguarding concern. That happens. Even if it was Ruby's fault, sometimes they forget lunch. You know, adults are human as well. That is not the safeguarding concern. It is her reaction to this situation. It is saying she is solely responsible for her lunch. I am not going to bring something in, and I do not want you to feed her. This is, you know, for her, the natural sequence of events. If you don't do this, you don't get food, you go hungry. But this isn't the correct, you know, sequence of events that you want to teach a child, okay? Because then if you associate food with punishment, or, you know, as punishment you take away food, then actually you end up with very unhealthy relationships with food. And from this safeguarding concern, after I would have written it, now, in the UK, we have things like programs like CPOMs, we have My Concern, and some schools still have, you know, written forms instead. That's all fine. But then afterwards, I would probably take this to SLT, which stands for Senior Leadership Team. I think maybe admin is the equivalent in the US. And I would say to them, what should we do now? Should we disobey the mum and give the child some food? Or should we obey the mum and the child doesn't get food? However, my problem with the latter is that actually, if she goes home, if Eve goes home and she gets told off by Ruby, and then Ruby says, you're not going to have a snack because you lied to me today, you don't know how many hours it will be until she gets more food. So if she had breakfast or didn't have breakfast, because there are clips of Ruby having said, right, I'm going to take away your right to have breakfast today or dinner, she could go a whole day without eating. And you don't want to be responsible, you know, even if it's just morally responsible, you know it in your heart, actually, I don't know when this child is going to get food next. You don't want to be responsible for that. But you also don't want to be responsible for making that decision by yourself. So that's why I would get Senior Leadership Team involved, or maybe the safeguarding lead, and ask for their opinion. Because that way, if Ruby were to make a complaint, were to kick up a fuss, actually you have the backing of people with, you know, I don't want to say more power, but are a higher ranking than you in the school. So you're not taking that brunt yourself. And I think for people in Senior Leadership Team, that must be a really difficult decision to make. But ultimately, we need to think of the child and what's best for the child. And another reason why I'm kind of making this video is because you can see how documenting these things, Ruby herself said this has happened several times. So even if you just had this lunch thing several times documented for one child, you are creating a picture in that home environment. You are seeing that actually the 6-year-old is several times not eating, let alone if Eve makes any disclosures or she does anything like that. And actually the school and teaching assistants, teachers, etc. have so much power to make a change, because with, you know, the family members or the neighbours, they wouldn't necessarily be documenting every single thing that they see. They would kind of maybe report it there and then it would just be waiting for the next case. Whereas schools, they create a picture. Because with, let's say in England, we have social services. If we wanted to make social services aware of something, we would have to show them several occurrences of something, several occurrences of concerns, unless it is something major like a disclosure of physical abuse. And in England, that's illegal, especially if you use an object. That's like straight away. You don't need a history of concerns, you go straight to them. I think social services equivalent in the US is CPS. But it's really, really important that we do that. And actually my suspicions are that Ruby Franke took her children out of school to decrease the likeliness of CPS coming back and investigating her or her ex-husband. And I think that's actually one of the dangers of taking children out of school, and actually how many children can be made vulnerable. I think there was a huge decrease in social services referrals during lockdown because most of them come from schools and teachers. And actually we have a huge role to play. And if this clip doesn't show you the power of reporting and the power of taking note and acting upon things, then I don't know what does. Because again, this was edited, this was published by her, and yes, it's now taken down, etc. But you think this is what she actively chose to put online, let alone what was hidden, what was not put on camera. And after the channel was taken down, clearly things kind of went downhill, and you just think, if only CPS, the police, would have listened to the multiple people that reacted and tried to help those children, this could have all been avoided. So any little signs that you think, don't just take it as something minor, document it. If it's nothing, it's nothing, it doesn't go anywhere. But if you start to get a picture day in, day out, week in, week out, monthly, you start to see that actually something could be happening at home, and it's something that you really need to take care of. So parents, your children are in good hands at school, and schools, make sure that you are abiding by safeguarding policies, that you are reporting things that concern you. If you have a doubt and you're second guessing yourself, it's probably worth putting on. If you put one thing on for a child in a whole year, then, you know, whew, that means it was probably something minor, a one-off thing that actually you were suspicious of, but it doesn't mean anything. Okay, but never second guess yourself and think, oh, it's probably nothing, because you don't know. You had several occurrences of this, times by maybe the amount of children. I know for a fact, I've spoken for too long, so I might react in another video about this if you want to, if you guys find this interesting. But the older son actually lost his bed and his bedroom for 7 months. He was sleeping on a beanbag. Now, if you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, basic needs is shelter, the ability to sleep, food. You can't deprive a child of that. That is CA. Exactly. So I might react to that if you guys are interested, but yes, just goes to show, take your role seriously. And if you are interested in other teacher-related videos, go check out some old ones. I hope to see you soon. Please leave your thoughts and comments down below, because loads of people are reacting to Ruby Franke, but actually not many people are seeing it from this professional aspect or seeing it from the teacher's point of view. So the more support you give this video, the more YouTube will push it out. And I think people need to know that there are individuals in society that care about kids and that are trying to do their best for them. So I will see you very soon. Bye.